I think there is a huge opportunity for AI-based tools to support the community, but I think it's really important. Like, we're really quite adamant about human in the loop. Part of that is just simple practicality. Like, large language models, they're amazing and I love playing with them, but they're not good enough to write an encyclopedia article. And it's amazing that we're getting such great results, but it does lead to hallucinations. And the hallucinations are just wrong. And in fact, they are worse. One of the things that's sort of obvious to people is in a business setting, trust is really important. It's a lubrication that makes everything a lot easier. You've seen stories that to me are just mind boggling about companies that are, when people work from home, they're using software to monitor that you're still moving your mouse and clicking on the keyboard. And I'm like, wow, that level of mistrust of employees is just deeply wrong. You don't want to work somewhere like that. They don't trust you, and that's a hostile environment, and it's just not good.
Welcome to Data Framed. This is Richie. Sometimes an idea is so successful, you can't believe it wasn't always obvious. Wikipedia has been one of the top 10 most visited websites in the world for more than a decade. But when it first started out, it was perceived as a terrible idea. If any fool could edit the encyclopedia, then how could you trust the contents? Today we're going to discuss the techniques that Wikipedia as an organisation used to build trust. It's a timely topic since AI is stirring a lot of conversations about what you can and can't trust. And beyond trust, Wikipedia has long been a leader in automation for updating and managing content. So I want to find out how generative AI is changing things at the organisation. Our guest is none other than Jimmy Wales, the founder at Wikipedia, and now Chair Emeritus at Wikimedia Foundation. Jimmy's written a new book, The 7 Rules of Trust, which forms the basis for today's conversation. So, let's hear Jimmy's story. Hi, Jimmy. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, great to have you here. Now, I'd like to start by going back to the early days of Wikipedia. Now, it wasn't immediately considered to be a really good idea. I know there were a lot of jokes around Wikipedia. So can you tell me, what was the harshest thing that was said about the site?
Yeah, it's a very good question, I would say. Obviously, Stephen Colbert sort of quite famously made fun of us on his show, but that was actually, it was interesting because he played a character that was a right-wing blowhard called Stephen Colbert, and he is Stephen Colbert, right? And so him making fun of you was not completely terrible, right? Because it was like, oh, he's sort of playing a buffoon. And, he talked about wikiality and, if you don't like something in reality, just edit the wiki and it changes, So it was a bit silly, but, I think mostly it was more like people just weren't sure. Like, they're like, okay, like, I don't think that's going to work, but okay, whatever. Have a try.
Yeah, I guess there are worse forms of publicity than having Stephen Colbert do a routine about your product.
Yeah. No, exactly. Although, I mean, I would say the worst wasn't poking fun. It was actually, there was an error in Wikipedia, and it was about John Sigenthaler Sr. And it said that he had been briefly suspected of having something to do with the Kennedy assassinations, which was absolutely untrue. He was actually a friend of the Kennedys. He was a pallbearer at Bobby Kennedy's funeral. So he saw this and he called me up and he's like, "Hey, I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry." And it was down within minutes after I got off the phone with him. And I checked the traffic logs and things like that, and almost no one had seen the page. So I was like, okay, that was terrible. But then he wrote a scathing editorial in USA Today about us, which was kind of a big deal, and really led to us, led to me promulgating a biography of living persons policy, which says any negative statement in a Wikipedia entry about a living person should be removed immediately unless it has a good source. I.e., what was happening at the time was people would say something, you're like, "Oh, that's weird. That doesn't have a source." And they would go on the talk page, "Oh, this doesn't have a source." And then people would discuss, "Oh, we're going to get a source." It's like, meanwhile, it's there on the site and shouldn't be. So, and that was when I would say we got pretty serious about what I would call like human dignity, of saying like, if it's a biography, we have a higher level of responsibility, a biography of a living person. Like, screw something up about Julius Caesar. okay, well, his family's feelings won't be hurt by it. It's bad. We should fix it as soon as possible. But the duty of care is much higher when it's a living person. So
Absolutely, yeah, and certainly if you got bad things being said about you on a Wikipedia page about you, I mean that's going to be quite hurtful, I think, because it's sort of
yeah,
spreading.
definitely.
Yeah, so I love the idea of just like prioritizing. Well, these are the really important things that we need to edit very quickly. All right, so I'd love to. I mean, I guess Wikipedia is one of the biggest sites in the world. Do you want to just give me a summary of how you think you got this crazy success?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things. So certainly in the early days, we met a need that was not being met online. So, the idea of just very straightforward factual information about everything under the sun is kind of an obvious use of the internet, but it didn't exist yet. There were a few encyclopedia reference type of sites. Some of them were paywalled, some of them were covered with ads, and they were small. But in terms of the a lot of times when people go on the internet and they're searching for information, pretty much what they're looking for is a Wikipedia article. Like that's kind of a thing that needed to be there. So that meant as the small community got started writing things, they got traffic. Like it was interesting because it was like what people were looking for. And so that had a big part of it. And then, over time, I think there are some of the early principles of Wikipedia which have been incredibly important to ongoing success and trust, as my book is about trust. I should talk about trust, um, including the idea of a neutral point of view, that Wikipedia should be neutral and shouldn't take sides on any major disputes. And that's obviously always something that's contentious and lots to grapple with there. But I think that's been really important and something that we never should forget and we should double down on as much as possible because it means that anyone from any side of the political spectrum or whatever belief system you might have should be able to come to Wikipedia and get a clear explanation of the state of debate about anything. And so that's really important. And then, rule 3 in the book is purpose. So I think one of the things that help make Wikipedia successful is it has a really simple, clear purpose. Like we're going to write an encyclopedia. It should be high quality. It should be neutral. It should be in all the languages of the world. And everyone can understand that purpose. And so it really helped people come together because we know what we're doing. Like we're here, we're going to start working together. We know what we're trying to accomplish. If it were a little more mushy and vague of like, oh, we're gonna write a bunch of stuff and like blah, 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 people wouldn't know what to do. Like, oh, is it a joke aside, or should we make funny things? Should we make serious things? Should we have funny cat videos? And no, we probably shouldn't. That's not really what we're here for.
Actually, I love that idea of just saying we're writing an encyclopedia because it just really distills things down into a simple sentence. If you're like, okay, we're going to write 1,000 articles on these particular topics, and you get overly word.
Yeah,
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 so
yeah. And in fact, actually, one of the things is like the idea of a free encyclopedia for every single person on the planet in their own language. Like that's a massive concept, right? That's a huge project. But actually, I think we got more participation early on because that huge project is quite inspiring. Like if I had said, oh, I'm going to write geographical history of the United States, and we're going to have one article each for each of the 50 states, people would have gone, okay, have fun. Yeah, that's not that exciting. Like, whatever. Yeah. Sounds like a reasonable thing to do. Go for it. Whereas this was like, oh, wow, I can actually take part in something that is super big and super interesting.
that's kind of an important lesson, I guess. If you give people like a big dream, then maybe that's the way to make things happen rather than give people realistic goals and they're like, okay, fine, whatever, I'll hit those. So, I mean, your book's all about trust, and it's such a hot topic at the moment. But one thing surprised me, like right at the start of chapter 1, you got this picture of a triangle. I'm like, oh, this is Aristotle's rhetoric triangle. I was like, oh, cutting edge, 2,500-year-old idea. Talk me through how is that related to trust?
Yeah, so the triangle, we actually use Frances Fry's formulation. So she's an academic professor at Harvard who also has a lot of business experience. So she went into Uber when they were experiencing a real crisis of trust and helped manage them through that in the interim period between Travis leaving and Daria coming in. And at that moment, internally, they had all kinds of trust problems. And one of the things that she said to me was one of the most fun interviews I did for the book. She's a great person. So she said, one of the things people say about trust is that once you've lost it, you can never get it back. And she said, that's just not true. There are things you can do to rebuild and get trust back. And so her triangle framework is empathy, logic, and oh my gosh, I'm spacing.
You have to read from your book.
I've got to check in the book. I mean, it's so weird. I've done a million interviews. I've been asked this 1,000 times. It's probably because of the million interviews and the 1,000 times. Authenticity, empathy, authenticity, and logic. Empathy, authenticity, and not logic. Yeah, I would have gotten there eventually. Yeah, read the book, people. I have, I promise you, many times. But and like these three pillars, she says, whenever you have a crisis of trust or a problem with trust, one of these, or at least one of these, has gone wrong. And so, that provided me a great framework to start thinking. And that framework is her framework, but it's not unique. There are actually a lot of academics working in trust who talk about a three-sided triangle. Those are just the terms she uses. Sometimes they use other terms. I thought that was helpful because I was writing about trust and thinking about trust and the various things I've learned, but I didn't have a systematic way of thinking about it. And so bringing it together with that really helped me to go, okay, right, now we've got a framework for thinking about this and talking about it.
Okay, yeah, they seem very useful. And I mean, you mentioned Uber. I think, what was it? Maybe around 2016, 2017. They were having so many different problems with just everything. It was like people getting attacked in the cars and all sorts of horrible stuff. And it seems like they have managed to fix a lot of it.
Internally, they had a lot of trust problems. So the executives didn't trust each other, and the drivers didn't trust the company, and riders, like passengers were losing trust, and regulators definitely didn't trust Uber. And they had to really start over. I mean, I remember this amazing story about them tracking a journalist riding in Uber. Like, this was a really bad idea because you're not building trust with the media if you're behaving badly like that. And so, it's sort of interesting. Okay, like, you go from that point to being, a reasonably trusted company. I mean, obviously, everybody's always got questions about any big company, of course, but um, and it really required them to take step back and have a real think about trust.
Yeah, I love that. It's like, stop doing really stupid stuff, like tracking
Yeah, yeah.
people in the cars.
Step
Yeah, it's
one.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, so I guess the other side of things is, I mean, Wikipedia is very much based. I mean, I guess it's a kind of a social media, but a lot of social media is like it's horrible and angry, whereas Wikipedia is like it seems like a mostly positive community. Can you talk me through like how you built the community side of things?
Yeah, definitely. Well, so, I mean, one thing that I would say is like Wikipedia is not social media, but it is media and it is social. So it's sort of in that category a little bit. But I mean, and one of the big differences is that purpose. So one of the things that makes social media so toxic is, whenever there's a box that's basically what's on your mind, well, some percentage of people have something really horrible on their minds, right? And this is true actually of a lot of different. So it doesn't have to be a box saying that. It can be a place for uploading a picture. It can be video, YouTube, whatever. But that open to creativity brings with it a lot of problems. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have that. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying the challenge is really hard there. And one of the things that made the challenge a lot easier for us is that purpose. Like, we're here to build an encyclopedia, and so, one of the oldest rules, and this is in the book, the chapter on civility, your mother was right, is no personal attacks. The idea is we're working together to write an encyclopedia, and we shouldn't be attacking each other and insulting each other and behaving badly. We should have collegial debates. We may disagree, but let's treat each other with respect and kindness because it's really practical. Like, it's the only way to get things done. And, in social media, you don't see that. I mean, particularly, I would say X is probably the worst, just in terms of it's a pretty horrible place with a lot of people viciously attacking each other for no actually useful purpose whatsoever. And because we have the purpose, then, basically you get blocked. Like, come in and say, you're all a bunch of Nazis. Okay. Hopefully you don't get blocked immediately. Hopefully someone will go, hey, by the way, don't be a jerk. Like, that's not what we do here. Like, like, that's not really appropriate. But then, if you keep it up, then yeah, you're just going to get blocked. I mean, it's like, that's not fun and it's not what we're here for. We're a friendly project to build an encyclopedia. So that's a piece of it. And then, obviously there was a lot of detail along the way, a lot of things to learn. one of the things that I would say about Wikipedia is that it is in many ways a child of the dot-com crash. And at a moment when we were growing really quickly, there was no money and there was no possibility of raising money. And had we had money to throw at the problem, we probably would have gone down a different path that wouldn't have scaled. We just wouldn't know what we were doing. So it's quite natural if you start a website and you see some social problems, you think, oh, we need to hire some moderators, we need to hire community managers, and it's going to be top down, and we're going to make rules and we're going to enforce them, and the company will be involved. This is exactly how all social media works. Is they've got moderators who enforce whatever rules. Instead, like, well, there's nobody to hire because we've got no money. So we have to work out, how do we do this? How do we manage this in a community? So we have the admins who are elected by the community. And then, okay, but you can't let the admins become tyrants. So, like, what are the checks and balances? So you can lose your adminship if you're not doing it the right way. All your actions have to be transparent and you have to justify them. We have the arbitration committees in the larger languages who are, elected to be a higher decision-making body. And, like, all of these elements had to evolve over time. So we had to evolve the institutions of a community in the same way that, if you think about, like, what makes a good municipal government, right? Well, you don't want to get tossed in jail for criticizing the mayor, but you also don't want people accosting your grandma walking down the street. And so you need that sort of balance, and you need sort of reason and thoughtfulness, and you want the police to be subject to checks and balances, right? Yeah, they're there to enforce the law, but they're not there to crack people in the head for no reason. And so all of that, those kind of ideas and principles, which we fully get in general society, like, they also make sense online. You can't copy everything word for word and line for line from the municipal code of conduct, but there's a lot of lessons to be learned. And that's what we had to learn. So we just had to sort of make it up as we went along and think about it in a thoughtful and kind way to say, like, okay, here's a problem. How do we deal with that?
It's fascinating, and from the sounds of it, you've kind of invented like a whole system of government, I guess, within the site. It's
Yes,
like you
sort
got
of. Yeah.
the police and all the layers of like adjudication and whatever. So I guess the other thing related to this is that it can be very difficult to know like what is true online, and so this is certainly a case if you're trying to write an encyclopedia, you need to know, well, is this correct or not?
Yeah. So, I mean, for this, we're pretty old fashioned about sources. So, we want the sources to be quality magazines, newspapers, academic journals, books. So, when we think about the sourcing for articles, then, it's like, okay, well, we're writing about cancer. Which do we prefer? Do we prefer the National Enquirer or the New England Journal of Medicine? I think we'll go New England Journal of Medicine. So it's that kind of pretty basic, pretty simple stuff. And even that, it leaves a lot of room for discussion and thought and chewing on what really counts as a reliable source. I mean, one of the problems we have these days online is things circulate on social media and they get promoted by algorithms, not because they're true, but because they're controversial or they're viral or they're funny or they're whatever they are. And so stuff, it's very, very common on social media to see some infographic that turns out to be complete nonsense. Like, none of it actually makes any sense, or it's really cherry picked and so forth. And, the Wikipedia is pretty immune to that kind of stuff because we basically spend our lives debating the quality of sources, and deciding, like, okay, well, what can we trust? How do we do it? The other thing is what I call, actually, I don't call it this, but I like this phrase. I just heard it from Cory Doctorow, said it the other day in a podcast or a speech. I don't know where he said it. Somebody told me about it. Epistemic humility. The idea of, it's not epistemic nihilism of, like, we know nothing, we have no idea, and there's no such thing as truth. No, 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 it's not that. But it's like saying, actually, truth is hard, and getting it right is hard, and we need to be very thoughtful and accept that we might get it wrong, and we need to always be ready to chew on ideas, chew on criticisms of Wikipedia. Like, okay, oh, you got a criticism of Wikipedia? We shouldn't become defensive and use PR strategies to combat it. We should go, like, okay, hold on. Let's have a look. Like, tell me more. Like what could we fix? Like, what are some sources that we should look at? And obviously, we're better or worse at that at different times because we're human beings and, things happen and the world's a noisy place. But that's the spirit that we should always have is to say, like, oh, how do we make this better?
I love that, and it feels like, a good life lesson beyond editing an online encyclopedia. It's like, yeah, accepting that you can be wrong sometime and trying to be better.
Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah.
seems good.
And I think one of the core principles of Wikipedia is always assume good faith. And this is not a suicide pact, right? It doesn't mean you assume good faith forever and infinitely, no matter what anybody does. But it's actually a good bet. It's a good starting point. You meet someone new. I mean, we do it every day in real life. Like you meet somebody new, and you don't think, yeah, probably they're going to stab me. I mean, if you do think that, you need some psychotherapy. Like you need some help. Like something's gone bad in your life, and you're hurting, and then that's unfortunate. And like let's see what we can do. But normally you meet somebody and you're like, oh, right. Oh, here's a new person. Like, what are they going to be like? Maybe I'm not interested. Maybe I am interested. Maybe they're kind of annoying. Probably they're not. And it's the same thing online is that kind of assume good faith when we see people come new to Wikipedia. This is the main application. So somebody comes to Wikipedia and they're doing something and it's not quite right. Okay. You can either assume this person is a plant, an operative, they're working for the KGB or the CIA or whatever crazy thing, or it's like, oh, probably this person is trying to be helpful. They're trying to make Wikipedia better, but they just don't quite know what they're doing yet. Maybe we can help them. Maybe we can give them a pointer and say, oh, like actually, when you wrote this sentence, you used a lot of words that are pretty conclusively, biased in a certain way. The way we would write it would be a lot more reserved. We also need sources, like blah, blah, blah. I'm teaching you to be a Wikipedian. And that's great because probably, not always, but probably the person's going to go, oh, right. Okay. That's great. Actually, that makes sense. Yeah, sure. Great. Let's do it that way.
Okay, yeah, so I love the idea of, like, just spend the time to teach people stuff before you start having to fight. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, exactly. And a lot of spaces online aren't really conducive to that. There are great places that are very conducive to that. I mean, one of the things that I write about in the book is there's a subreddit called Change My View. And basically what happens there, people post, whatever their view is on something and they say, change my view. And then what you're supposed to do is whether you agree or not with that view, you're supposed to put forward the best argument you can to try to change their mind. So even if you agree with them, you can say things like, well, I do agree with you, but here's the thing that I think is the most challenging for our shared view. And then at the end, people will say, oh, you changed my mind. You didn't change my mind. Or often it's like, oh, yeah, I sort of changed my mind a bit on this part of it. And I still got the general and it's great, and people there, they've got really a sense of civility. I mean, it's not perfect, like whatever. It's human beings, so people get angry and stuff like that. But generally, it's quite good, and I think that is great. And we need more spaces like that online.
As a Brit, I find all these things are like, "Oh, this is how you have polite conversation." I'm very much in favor of this. It's
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think that's true everywhere. I mean, certainly, Americans are very nice people usually. I mean, not as nice as Canadians. No one's as nice as Canadians, but yeah, I try to avoid stereotypes, but only I keep the nice ones. Like
Yeah,
I
absolutely. S
some Canadians out there, "How dare you? Like, we're not that nice." Okay, okay. Most of the Canadians are very nice, just not you, but okay.
okay, so, I mean, you mentioned, like, having, civil discussions. So I think, maybe perhaps the most vicious, parts of Wikipedia are things, like the talk pages where you have people arguing about things, and then also you have edit wars where people will change things, then change them back. When people fundamentally can't disagree on things, how do you resolve that?
Yeah, well, it's quite hard. Like, one of the fundamental techniques is to go meta, to step up one level and say, "Look, we're not gonna agree about this fundamental issue, but we can characterize the debate. We can be fair about that. We can describe the issue." So my classic example is, think about a kind and thoughtful Catholic priest and a kind and thoughtful Planned Parenthood activist. They're never going to agree about abortion. They could fight about it until the end of time, but they can step back and say, okay, but we're just going to write about the controversy and we're gonna sort of explain what the different views are. Turns out people are quite good at that. Quite often people can do that. Another one that I think is really important and that I've been lately, it's sort of one of my campaigns, is like avoid what we call wiki voice. In other words, don't say things in the voice of Wikipedia unless you've got really pretty much overwhelming consensus in the community. If any significant minority in the community disagrees, you should probably step back a bit and start to characterize the debate. Don't say it in the voice of Wikipedia. So there's lots of things you can say. Like, it's quite easy to say Paris is the capital of France. Like, that's fine. Like, that's not in dispute. Like, literally, I don't think there's a single person anywhere who could put forward any plausible disagreement with that. So you can just say it. Like, you can say it. You might need a footnote, but it's fine. Like, that's not controversial. Loads of statements are. Loads of statements are things that you may believe very strongly, but other people in the community may not. And I'm not even talking here about, do we disagree about the fundamentals. So sometimes maybe you and I agree about the fundamental thing, but I may think, wow, we shouldn't say this in the Wikipedia voice. We should sort of talk about the different sides. So even though we agree, we should acknowledge that there's another side. And you may say, like, no, the other side's crazy. I'm not. In that case, I would say, look, if we can't agree, then it shouldn't be in Wikipedia's voice. It should just be describing the issue. So that's one of the techniques, because that element of neutrality, I always say it serves two purposes. So one is the epistemic or the cognitive purpose, the knowledge purpose. Like, I don't want to go to an encyclopedia and only hear one side of the story. I want to hear about the debate, but also the social purpose of, like, oh, how can people who disagree actually work together? Well, this is a great technique, is to say, okay, we're not going to agree, but we can write about what we disagree about, and we can agree about the debate and how to characterize it.
Okay, that's interesting. So you've mentioned neutrality a few times, and it seems incredibly important for an encyclopedia to have a neutral point of view. Do you think the neutral point of view is always a good idea, or when would you want to be opinionated when you're putting things across?
I think the encyclopedia should be neutral, full stop, and that's sort of top to bottom. That's the end of it. Other aspects of life, absolutely not. No, I mean, certainly, I wouldn't expect Tom Friedman, who I interview in the book. He's a columnist for the New York Times. He's got opinions. His columns are about his opinions. Great, he should be opinionated. He's actually an interesting analyst, and sometimes I disagree with him, but I'm like, I always have to grapple with what he says, even if I disagree, because he's a smart guy and he knows a lot of people, and he's talked to, he's lived through a lot of things, and that's great. And certainly, in my life, I definitely would say we at the Wikimedia Foundation, but and me personally, as a person who's an activist for an open internet and free software, open source, advocate for access to knowledge, then yeah, I've got a lot of things to say. They're quite opinionated. Like, yeah, basically, you shouldn't be censoring Wikipedia. You shouldn't block Wikipedia because you don't agree with what it says. Like that, I've got an opinion there, and I'm ready to fight for it. So yeah, the idea of neutrality is something, though, that even in those kind of contexts, right, it's actually, I think, helpful to people if you are an activist for something. Like, you really think, I want to change the world in this way. Let's say the environment, right? It still behooves you, when you are learning about some particular sub issue within the environmental cause, to take that sort of Wikipedian mindset to say, okay, well, the first thing I need to do is understand. I need to understand, what are the debates? What's the argument here? And if I don't do that, I'm going to be a less effective advocate, because I'm going to be missing some of the facts. I'm going to get some things wrong. And therefore, I won't be able to convince the people who disagree with me, because they're going to be like, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I think it comes in a lot of different places where reason and sort of thoughtful chewing on ideas is probably our most important human responsibility.
Absolutely. So yeah, I love the idea that like if you've got a good opinion, then yeah, go for it. But yeah, in the context of encyclopedias, yeah, let's do neutral things. You mentioned human responsibility, and there's been a lot of talk like community with respect to humans. I think obviously, like we've reached a point with AI. We've had like some people talking about like we're not far off the point of having AI colleagues. I know Wikipedia's like long had, like, a lot of automation, like, there have been bots for many, many years to automate stuff. Have you seen this progress over the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, so it's really interesting. So our bots, so there's kind of two things. So one, most of the bots aren't even remotely AI related. Like, they're doing things like, like, if you see an article go from 20,000 bytes to 4 bytes, probably that's vandalism. So a bot might revert that instantly and notify a human to be like, oh, something weird's happened here. That's not AI. That's just like basic automation of some things. We also have some machine learning tools and algorithms which are somewhat used in the community. So there's an ORES scoring system which you can turn on and filter recent changes. I sometimes play with it. One of my favorite is um, edits that are bad but probably in good faith from new users because I'm always interested in that. Like, oh, okay. And can it accurately detect that? It's okay. Like, it's just using this is pre large language model, so it's just using some statistical things. Like, actually, yeah, I find it's not perfect, but sometimes you look at it and you're like, yeah, that looks like to me as a human, that looks like a good faith edit that's not very good by a new user. So then how do I respond to that? Okay, well, then that's a whole category of like, oh, well, I should probably go talk to them and this and that. And, identifying spam, that can be automated pretty well. It's like spam is spam and it's not that hard to detect. In terms of like what we're looking at now, I think there is a huge opportunity for AI based tools to support the community. But I think it's really important. Like, we're really quite adamant about human in the loop. Part of that is just simple practicality. Like, large language models, they're amazing and I love playing with them, but they're not good enough to write an encyclopedia article. The way the technology works, and I understand your audience is a lot of machine learning and AI people. So for them, sorry, I'm boring and hopefully I don't get it too far wrong. But, predicting the next token based on, probabilistic guessing what the most plausible next thing is amazing. And it's amazing it works at all. And it's amazing that we're getting such great results. But it does lead to hallucinations. And the hallucinations are just wrong. And in fact, they are worse in my experience. And I think this is uncontroversial to say. They're much worse on more obscure topics. So the further you get from very simple claims into more obscure things, like I saw an example which I haven't tested much, but if you ask who is Tom Cruise's mother, most of the models get it right. If you ask that person, I can't remember her name. If you ask who's her son, no idea. Like, or they make something up. And why is that? Well, it's because they've read it one way lots of times. They've read about Tom Cruise and but they've never read the other way. And so, like, for a human and human reasoning, it's like, well, the minute I can ever remember Tom Cruise's mother's name, I'm going to have to, if I use this anecdote, I'm going to have to do that. But I know if I know who your mother is, I know who her son is. Like, that's like tautological. Like, that's very simple. But the models don't work that way. They're not really understanding. They're just predicting tokens. And so as a result, on less common topics, they hallucinate more, which means for writing the encyclopedia, they're not good. But there's stuff they are really good at. And, one of the things I've played around with, and I hope to get back to it after the book tour and all of this stuff that I'm doing right now, I wrote a little script just to say, okay, like, I can feed it a Wikipedia entry, a short entry, because it's not really good at doing a long one. A short Wikipedia entry and the sources. Maybe there's 5 sources. And I ask it, is there anything in these sources that should be in Wikipedia but isn't? Or is there anything in Wikipedia that's not supported by the sources? Make some suggestions. And you know what? It's pretty good. It's not perfect. It's pretty good. And I haven't even done any like prompt engineering or playing around to try to improve it. But I feel like it's probably good enough to give some pointers. And so now you can imagine if you had a more sophisticated system. This is just me banging out a script, and I'm a very bad programmer, so whatever. But a more sophisticated system that somehow, let's use multiple models to ask the same thing. Let's cross check it. Let's actually make sure that it's not hallucinating the sources. Let's do this and that. And let's tell it, don't make a suggestion unless you're really, really sure. That's actually one of the harder things to do. Then what if you could do that and run it massively over all of Wikipedia and leave little notes on the talk page saying, hi, I'm your friendly neighborhood robot, and I noticed that 3 of the sources mention this person's birthplace, but Wikipedia doesn't have their birthplace, and usually we do. What do you think? And then a human can go, oh, right. Because one of the things we know, like a lot of Wikipedians, they come to Wikipedia not to, like they're just like, I'm a Wikipedian. I'm like, what am I going to do today? I'm going to do something good in Wikipedia. And they're always looking for something to do. And they sometimes just click random article. Like, people enjoy doing that. Click random article and see if you can improve it. Well, this would be a little bit better than random. It would be like, oh, here's a list of things where the AI thinks there's an easy fix. They'll take a few seconds for a human to approve. Have a go at it. I think people will enjoy it. If they don't, they won't use it. So that's what's great is like, let's just make some things that the community might find useful and see if they do.
So I love that idea of having AI assistants for just inspiring humans on what to edit. And I guess, I mean, there's probably some of our data frame listeners can probably help out building that sort of thing. So yeah, challenge for the audience, I think, go to Wikipedia, build some tools for
Yeah, yeah.
auto
Oh, yeah,
editing.
that'd be lovely. Yeah. Yeah, you can come to my user talk page and I'll chat with you about it because I'm very interested.
Wonderful. Okay, challenge for the audience. But you mentioned you don't think um, having a completely AI generated encyclopedia is a good idea. In that case, I got to ask, what's your take on Grokipedia?
Well, I mean, I haven't had time to do a proper analysis, so I'm always a little reserved about what I say, but that's because I'm a Wikipedian and that's the way we are, you know. But if you ask me to predict what it would be like, and then you put that up against all the news reports I've read, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much what I would have thought. So a lot of errors, a lot of hallucinations. Certainly, although Elon loves to promise that it will be more neutral than Wikipedia, it seems to interestingly agree with some of his more curious political views. And that's not most people's definition of neutrality. Like agreeing with Elon isn't the core of neutrality. So
I mean, unless you're Elon.
unless you're Elon, yeah. And so, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I think it's an interesting concept, right? Could you do this? Could you use a large language model to generate quality content? And obviously, we're all going to be grappling with that over the next few years in lots of different ways. So already we see in journalism, there are bad uses and good uses that are taking place. Like one of the ones I actually like is um, I'll give two examples, but one is um, earnings report story. So a story about earnings report. I don't know to what extent it's large language models, but I know that a lot of the financial publications are using technology to semi-automate making those stories, and it's fine. Like, because basically those are very formulaic stories anyway. It's sort of like, oh, analyst expectations were 2 point, you know, $2.10 earnings per share, but it actually ended up $2.12, beating earnings. The stock responded thusly. Like it's pretty basic stuff. And for humans to have to do that is really boring. And, it's like, yeah, great. Like that's completely fine. I hope humans checking it because it might hallucinate and it might get it all wrong. But another example that I would argue could be useful is a certain type of sports story, the less interesting ones. But you've got in the sports section of the paper, you've got to have both like some pretty basic reporting, like here's what happened in the game last night, like here's the score, here's the step by step. That's actually pretty tedious. Then there's the more interesting thing, the human flair, the angle, like the funny thing that happened, the interesting bit, like how did the players react? What did the fans say? That you still need like proper journalism, but maybe pieces of that could be helped. And so that as we see that, and then, like we know the financial model of journalism is under pressure, has been for a long time. There will be publications who want to stretch it a little too far and like, oh, if only we didn't have to pay all these reporters, we could churn out twice as much content. And that's not going to end well. I think we're all going to be grappling with that sort of thing. And then we can also talk about bad actors who actually don't care at all about quality or correctness. And yeah, I could imagine them churning out lots of stuff that isn't very good.
Yeah, it does seem like there's a sort of economic trade-off here. So you've got like cheap AI. Well, I guess a lot of AI is cheaper than humans for this kind of stuff, and then you got like difference in qualities of models. So like the really cheap models, they get it wrong a lot more time, but they're again you're saving money on your tokens, and then fact checking is just expensive in general. So yeah, I guess you pay a premium for having truth.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's inevitable because, it's an amazing technology. And I mean, I use it all the time. I mean, I'm playing with it, experimenting, using it for personal use. I think the key, as with everything, and as I say this, it echoes things that I remember saying about Wikipedia when it was a brand new technology, which is we don't, it's not about do we use it or do we not use it. It's about let's teach people how to use it. Like, what are the good and the bad uses? So, like sometimes you used to hear teachers would say to their students, don't even look at Wikipedia. And I'm like, well, they're 100% going to look at Wikipedia. Like kids love it. Instead, you should be saying, oh, here, Wikipedia. Right. It's super interesting. It can be very valuable. But by the way, when it says the neutrality of this article has been disputed, they mean something by that. When it says the following section doesn't cite any sources, they mean something like that. If you read something that sounds surprising, it might be vandalism. Check the sources. Like, let's teach people the right way to use Wikipedia. Similarly with AI, like I use it. Like one of the things I love using it for is cooking. I love to cook. I fancy myself a decent cook. And, I ask it for recipes. And I also ask it for links to, famous cookery websites. And it has in the past absolutely hallucinated the URLs and, apologized to me that it doesn't know which websites are real or not. Like, great. Okay. But I always warn people, I'm like, yeah, it's fun and useful to do that, but I wouldn't recommend it if you're brand new to cooking. Like, I know how to cook, so when it gives me a recipe that has way too much salt, I have a bit of an instinct to go, "Ooh, that seems a bit much. Like, maybe you're getting that wrong. Can I challenge you on that?" But, it's very useful. I also use it for I'm a programmer, but not a very good programmer, and I can absolutely see why Stack Overflow, for example, has, as I've read, 10% of the traffic it had some years back, and it's because as a programmer, a bad programmer, you hit a lot of error messages and you're like, "Oh, how do I fix this?" And you Google it and you get to Stack Overflow and somebody's discussing it and you get the answer. Whereas now, Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT, they're all quite good at coding and they're quite good at explaining a basic syntax error or even a more subtle error. And it's just more efficient as an end user. It's like, this is a better product for me. Like, I'm trying to write something and I'm getting it wrong. I need some help and I want to ask a question. It's decent. I mean, although it is far too prone, in my opinion, to tell me to sort of rewrite JavaScript. I'm like, no, probably it's my bug. Probably it's not a bug in JavaScript. Like, that's probably not it. Like, I don't know why you're telling me this. Because it's telling me also I'm a genius, so.
It's nice to be heard that you're a genius, but yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
chances are you probably made the mistake yourself.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's often like, oh, that's a very insightful question. I'm like, literally, I have enough self-respect to know that was not like, I asked a really dumb question, and I'm okay with that, right? You don't have to butter me up, like, it's fine.
Absolutely. So actually, I mean, you mentioned that Stack Overflow traffic has decreased because people use all these AI tools. It said, um, how has Wikipedia been affected by this? Because I guess people want to look up like facts about Tom Cruise's mom, but do they go to ChatGPT instead of Wikipedia?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. So I would say not necessarily ChatGPT, it's a different use case, and it's a different paradigm, and it doesn't directly it may compete, everything competes with everything in some sense. I say Google AI summaries is probably the more impactful, potentially. So there was a Pew Research study not long ago that looked at for according to their study, and I can't really vouch for it completely, but it seems plausible, that in terms of, like, in search results, the first page, the classic 10 blue links, Wikipedia is cited on the first page 3% of the time. Sounded low to me, but it depends on what you're searching for. And in AI summaries, we're linked to 6% of the time. So we're getting twice as many links to Wikipedia, but people click through half as often. So why do you not click through? Because, well, it answers your question. So you say, oh, who is Tom Cruise's mom? And then it goes so and so. And then there's a link to Wikipedia, but you don't need to click it because you got the answer you needed. On the other hand, according to Google, the when people do follow those links, they're much more engaged. So they didn't just click into Wikipedia to find out the name of the mom and then bounce. They actually like, oh, that's his mom's name. Oh, great. Also, I was thinking about this, and so I'm going to go read about Tom Cruise. So they stay longer. We haven't verified that, but that seems plausible to me. So as a result, that's kind of a wash. Getting twice as many links, but click through half as often is kind of a wash. But we have seen, we just had a blog post about this recently, an 8% drop year over year in human visits to Wikipedia. That doesn't mean our traffic has dropped, but we try to analyze bots versus non-bots, and that's imperfect, of course, but we have some idea. And so that's concerning, but not a disaster at the moment. And then I think a part of that to understand is for Wikipedia, we're a charity and our business model, we don't have ads. So our business model is about as long as you know the information you got is from Wikipedia, then when you do see that banner saying, hey, you use Wikipedia all the time, you should probably chip in, you'll respond. And that will keep the lights on, that keeps us running. And so we're not so obsessed with page views. Like if we were funded by ads, obviously an 8% drop in page views is an 8% drop in revenue. And that doesn't really match for us. Like what we really need is people's trust. We need people to love Wikipedia. We need people to say, yeah, Wikipedia, that's one of the good things. We should chip in. And so that's what we have to defend, not so much just the page views. Obviously, we care about page views to a degree and all of that, but it's not our primary motivator.
Okay, that's reassuring. But you mentioned there's an increase in bot traffic. I presume is this all the foundation model companies scraping your site? Then I mean, I know Wikipedia text is like basically all of it is in most of the large language models these days.
Yeah. So all of the major models use Wikipedia quite heavily. And that's fine. That is what it is. Like we're freely licensed, and that's kind of we're happy to be part of the infrastructure of the world. But one of the things I've come to understand recently, other people got this long before I did, but is like bot traffic versus human traffic is very different in terms of what it costs us. Why is that? How could that possibly be? And the answer is humans tend to visit the most popular pages, and they, particularly if something's big in the news, will get millions of views. So when the Queen died, obviously millions of people came to read about the Queen. Well, what does that mean? That means we build the page out of the database and we have it cached in memory and we just blast it out. It costs very little. Whereas if a bot comes and reads every obscure page of Wikipedia, well, we have to have more servers, either more RAM for caching. We have to have more database, calls and construct pages and all that. It actually costs us a disproportionate amount. And what we feel is awkwardly unfair about that. It's not like it's wrecking us, but it's like, gee, the people who are giving an average of, as I understand, I was told recently, $10.38 a year, like that's the average donation to Wikipedia. Well, the people chipping in their $10 or 10 quid, 10 euros, whatever it is, they're thinking, great, I love Wikipedia. I want it to survive. They're not thinking, I really want to subsidize OpenAI crawling Wikipedia, right? That's not what they're there for. And so that fact that it costs us more and it's being funded by ordinary people chipping in their money doesn't seem right. So we have an enterprise product. Google is a good customer, so we're happy with Google, but we're still working on the other companies, and we're not yet blocking them or things like that. We're quite easygoing and friendly, and they're like, "Hey, come and do the right thing." So hopefully, they will pay their way, and that seems fair. Like that's kind of like the fairness model of Wikipedia is like you use it all the time, you should probably chip in. Your bot uses all the time, you should probably chip in a lot. So,
Yeah, I feel like Sam Altman can afford a $10.38 donation to keep
well, yeah,
listening.
I mean, a little proportionality would be good, but yeah, exactly.
All right. So it seems like negotiations with the foundational model companies are kind of ongoing. So I'd love to move a bit beyond Wikipedia actually, because it feels like a lot of the stuff we talked about with trust, these can be useful like well beyond just creating an encyclopedia. So talk me through like how do you use these principles, or how can they be used like in day to day life in your work?
Well, I mean, I think, one of the things that's sort of obvious to people is like in a business setting, trust is really important. It's a lubrication that makes everything a lot easier. Like if you are, I'll tell you, like here's an example. You've seen stories that to me are just mind-boggling about companies that are when people work from home, they're using software to monitor that you're still moving your mouse and clicking on the keyboard. And I'm like, wow, like that level of mistrust of employees is just deeply wrong. And I think if you are an employee who works at a company like that, well, every time you're not jiggling your mouse to pretend to be at work, please be on LinkedIn and looking for a job. Like you don't want to work somewhere like that. They don't trust you, and that's a hostile environment, and it's just not good. Whereas, if you can build a culture where you could say, to the staff, like, yeah, work from home. I trust you. What really matters is we got to get the work done. Like we've got customers, we got responsibilities here. We're going to, do this. And I'm not going to watch every single thing you do because that's like weird and annoying. And wow, you know what? You'll get much better work out of people because you've built a healthy environment and people are like, yeah, actually they treat me properly like a decent human being. So I'm going to treat them back like that. I'm going to go the extra mile. We try to do the best for our customers. Like we take pride in that. All of that kind of good stuff really works in an environment of trust. And when you don't have trust, everything starts to break down. Like certainly if you imagine, say, business to business partnerships, like there's a lot that is not written into a contract that is part of the relationship and part of the implied agreement. And that's good, right? Writing every single thing down and then ticking off to the letter, we're only going to do what we're contracted to do. That's like when the relationship's gone very, very wrong. Like that's pretty bad. And it means less success in business and so on. So, all of these things, like this is why trust really matters. And then, how do you build it? Well, some of it's kind of obvious. I mean, we talk about transparency and make it personal and have a good purpose. So all of these rules are designed to be practical, to be things that you could check off. And like one of our big recommendations in the book is for companies is take a trust inventory. Like really sort of sit down and go through the 7 rules and go like, okay, what are the things that we maybe could be doing better? Where are we failing? Like if we know like one of the issues we have, a lot of companies have this is like, oh, we need to make this really hard change. Um, and it's really tough, and maybe we're gonna have to let some people go and so forth. But nobody trusts us. They think we're up to no good and so on and so forth. Then okay, you're gonna have a big problem. But if it's like, yeah, people will accept, like they're gonna be unhappy they left that they're losing their job, but the other people are gonna be like, yeah, it was fair. The decision was made in a way that was reasonable. And obviously it's a shame, but we're gonna have to, reconfigure the company. Like, wow, trust really matters a lot in those cases, that you aren't being malicious and capricious and all of that. And so you've got to build it.
Absolutely. So it seems like the big places to watch out for this are when either when things have gone horribly wrong or they're about to go wrong, and that's the point where you really need to think about how do we make this process trustworthy. I mean, certainly, like if you're having to make people redundant, it's like, well, are you doing it because the company finances are a mess, or is it because like, oh, executive needs to hit their bonus this year? So yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
you want
yeah,
to be
yeah. No, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, exactly. Well, and also, yeah, think about, yeah, that's like employees and the management and the company. But there's also like in a business to business situation where my company is supposed to deliver something for your company, but we're going to miss the target, right? How are you going to react to that? And if we have a relationship of trust, and I can go to you and say, yeah, unfortunately, these things happen. We're going to be 2 weeks late. Are you going to go, you suck. This is terrible. I'm out of here. I'm going to find somebody else next time around? Or are you going to be like, oh, okay, like I know you did your best. I can see the problem. Let's think about how we're going to solve this so it doesn't happen again. Like you've got the trust of like, oh, you're a proper partner. Uh, yeah, all of that. Super important.
absolutely definitely better than just being like, okay, we're going to miss it. Like, let's not communicate with the customer. We'll just
Yeah.
ghost them for
Well,
2 weeks and
and
see
yeah,
if they
yeah, and
notice.
that's exactly where you get into a really big problem, right? Because you didn't follow a basic principle of transparency of like, like, oh, actually, like one of the things is be transparent, especially when you have something to hide. That's one of the chapter headings. And it's like, yeah, it's easy to be transparent when everything's going great. It's harder when it's like, ooh, actually, you're gonna have to go hat in hand and say, "Yeah, actually, something bad has happened, and we need to tell you about it." Like that's harder, but it's actually the moment when trust is built. It's actually the moment when people can see. It's like, yeah, it's easy to be, like everything's fine, but actually to come in and say it when you'd rather not have to say it. Yeah, that's incredible. It's a great moment to build a better relationship going forward.
Definitely. Bit of a test of character, but it seems very worthwhile. All right. So I guess, are there any places where you think your rules about trust ought to be applied that aren't at the moment? Like, are there any areas where you think, okay, we need to really increase trust here?
Well, I mean, yes, there are, but I'm hesitating just a little bit, but I'll tell you why. So one of the areas that we have a big problem and one of the side effects, and we've been talking about the stuff I prefer to talk about, which is, like practical matters in business and personal relationships and all that. But also we know that politics is an absolute mess these days. And trust in journalism, trust in politicians is at all-time lows. And in many cases, quite right. We have, and one of the issues there is like whenever people are voting and they think, well, you know what, I'm not gonna rank my voting in any way based on whether I trust the person because they're all liars and they're all dishonest. So I'm going to use something else. I'm just going to go with my feelings about their claimed policies, right? Oh, that's a problem. Like that gets us into a world of mess. We need to actually, at the ballot box, punish people who aren't trustworthy. Like, don't vote for people if you can't trust them. And that the reason I hesitate is, well, like, okay, great. Yeah, people might go, yeah, Jimmy, you're right. But that isn't like a proactive, simple step to like build trust. It's just like what we can do as consumers of politics. But it's an area where the breakdown of trust in society is a big problem. And I do think it makes sense to say, let's be a bit more demanding about trust. Like, let's demand that politicians, the same way we expect a company, like, like Amazon. Okay, Amazon. I love Amazon. Amazon comes all the time to my house. Do I have complaints about, sort of big abstract complaints about Amazon as a company? Yeah, of course. Like everybody could have something that they, like how are they treating people? Is it okay? All that. Yeah, fine. Great. But you know what? When I order the thing on Amazon, it's gonna come. And if it doesn't come and I contact Amazon, they're gonna send me another one. Like you trust them in that sense. Like they just do the right business things. And I feel like in politics, we're not even sure they're gonna do the right things. Like, in the US, there was just this longest ever government shutdown because they couldn't make a simple agreement on the budget. And it's like, okay, gang, you're not even doing the thing. Like, it's the one thing you're there to do. And you're all squabbling so much and turning everything into a culture war and being so vicious. You're not actually governing the country in any sensible way. How about a little compromise, a little give and take, a little like trust each other a little bit to say, like, you know what, I'm going to give you this one, but you're going to owe me next time, you know? Or I'll give you this, but you need to give me that. Okay, well, we can find a path forward. No, it's just like stonewalling, breakdown. It's a lack of trust, and it's not good.
Okay, yeah, certainly. I mean, politics is very tricky in terms of trust. But I mean, I guess if Uber can turn it around, you talk about like ways to rebuild trust. Maybe we can fix politics as well.
There's a great quote in the book about a French leader who said, this is during the height of the Cold War, and I'm not naming the names because that's not important. It's like a French leader said of the U.S. president, "Well, if the president says it, that's good enough for me." Like there was trust, even though they didn't agree on lots of things politically. And I remember when it was Obama versus McCain, and I remember like at the time I wasn't thinking about trust and all that. I didn't have those words to use yet, but I said to lots of my friends, I'm like, "You know what? This is great. I'm really proud of the country. Like, I have agreements and disagreements on policy with each of them. I know I'm gonna vote one way, but you know what? They're both proper people. Like, they're both sensible. They're not crazy radicals. They're not dishonest. They've got problems, whatever, it's okay." Whereas more recently, I'm like, "Yeah, this isn't okay. Like, this isn't just like, oh, I have some disagreements on policy." I'm like, "This is not proper behavior." And yeah. And I live now in the UK, and I'm the first to say in the last election, I don't want to bore people who aren't in the UK, but I will anyway. But in the last election, the Tories lost, and I think they lost more than Labour won because they had lost the trust of the country. Not about policy, not about this and that. It was about that party in Downing Street when we were all feeling for the Queen, sitting all alone the next day at her husband's funeral. And we find out later, meanwhile, the night before, while the Queen is sort of in isolation because of COVID, and they're having parties in Downing Street. Like, this is not okay. Like, you're not behaving like proper people. And I think that feeling was more important to voters. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some political scientists will do surveys and prove me wrong, but I bet I'm right. It meant more to people than the specific details of policy. Like that, it was just like, I don't trust you anymore to be doing the right things. You're just having a laugh at our expense. It's not okay.
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess, really, I mean, the lesson there is like you've got to behave as a trustworthy human if you want people to respect you, and they want you to trust you. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. When you go out uh, driving during COVID, don't say I had to go driving with my children in the back to test my eyesight. I don't know. That doesn't seem like a plausible answer to me. Sorry.
absolutely, yeah. Maybe just don't lie to the general public. Really good tip for building trust. All right, super. So just finally, I always want new people to learn things from. Who are you following right now? Whose work are you interested in?
I'll tell you who I'm interested in. I'm afraid to say I'm not sure I can follow his work directly because he's too smart and all of that. But I really am a big fan and a friend of Demis Hassabis. So Demis is the CEO of DeepMind, Google's big AI unit, and he just won the Nobel Prize in chemistry for the work on protein folding. But like the stuff that DeepMind are doing, and it's beyond just the commercial large language models and all that stuff, which they are at the forefront of. But I'm really fascinated about, all of the amazing possibilities, the exciting positive things that are going to come out of, using AI techniques, using large, like machine learning to crack some really hard problems in biology and health. I think it's an amazing time to be alive, and it's an amazing time to maybe live a little longer and a little bit happier and a little bit healthier. And so I think that stuff is really fantastic. And so it's the kind of thing that, although for my professional work, I have to think a lot about large language models and stuff that's directly sort of coming into my world. I'm keeping one eye on the other stuff. Driverless cars is another example. Like, I'm fascinated. Like, I just think, you know, the idea that, in I'll tell a funny little story. When my kids were little, I have a Volvo. I'd just gotten my brand new Volvo. This is several years ago now. It's now my not so brand new Volvo. And the car beeps a lot. Like, the kids call it a scaredy cat. But also, I said to them, yeah, actually, like, I'm in a parking lot. If I get too close to another car, it will slam on the brakes. And they said, so I don't wreck into anything. And one of them said, but don't all cars do that? Like, because 'cause they're little kids. They're like, "Obviously, like, cars shouldn't, like, wreck into stuff. Like, why would a car wreck into stuff? It's got cameras. Like, we know it's got cameras. A lot of cars have cameras. Why do they wreck into stuff?" It's like, "Yeah, you're right." And so I envision, in not that far away, not as quickly as Elon promised us, like, it's a little bit, speaking of trust, but in a very near future, like, the idea of dying in a car accident, which is a quite common thing, or being permanently, life-changing injuries, is gonna seem like really old. Like, really, it's like, wow, like, you know, dying of scurvy or something, like something that just doesn't happen anymore because we figured out like how to solve it. That's exciting to me. And so I do watch that as well. Like, I'm really interested in the technology around automated vehicles and the possibilities for safety and sort of better travel and transport. So
I love that. I guess the common theme there in like solving causes of death. That seems, yeah, definitely
yeah,
a
it's a good
good
thing.
thing
Yeah,
to look
let's
at.
do that. Let's have a lot more of that and a lot less yelling at each other on Twitter.
All right, I think it's a wonderful way to wrap up then. So, yeah, thank you so much for your time, Jimmy.
Yeah, lovely, brilliant. Thank you.